Hello and welcome to Roller Page du Quartier. My name is Nick Papagiannopoulos and I'm here today to show you the proper way to fill in a mandatory form for a promise to purchase in an undivided co-ownership share of a chiefly residentially movable held in an undivided co-ownership. We will go through every area as we were trained within our studies and our official training that we received here at the agency as well. I will be highlighting step by step all the key sections that require the most precise attention that will eliminate any unnecessary errors that we as brokers can be challenged with throughout our career. Please take a verbal note. A promise to purchase in an undivided co-ownership. As a promise to purchase, it is a pre-contract, therefore a commitment of the seller to sell his immovable and a commitment from the buyer to buy. All the information stipulated within this promise to purchase needs to be accurate. Therefore, as an acceptance of a promise to purchase, if that would be the case, the notary would take this promise to purchase as a basis of all information that would be included in a deed of sale in order for them to transfer the rights of ownership. So, with that said, let us begin. We have the first section, the identification of the parties. Always on the left-hand side, we have the information of our buyer. Should there be two buyers, it would go under here. A third buyer and plus would go on an Annex G. Right-hand side section for the seller, seller 1, seller 2, if that would be the case, and if needed more, it would go on an Annex G. Remember, I wrote here, this section always needs to be filled out, must not leave blank for other broker to fill in. This is illegal, okay? We have the name of the buyer, the street, the number, the postal code, the phone number, the email, name of the seller, address, street, postal code, phone number, okay? So again, left-hand side, buyer section, right-hand side, seller section, all to be filled out. Section 2, object of the promise to purchase. We have here my full name as a broker and my license number that I'm carrying and following the agency of Royal Lepage du Quartier. Section 3, the summary description of the immovable. Here we are speaking of an undivided co-ownership. So we have the percentage share of the immovable held in undivided co-ownership. The civic address that best describes the cadastre would go here, the province, the postal code, the unit number, the address, apartment number, backyard patio, etc. Now, including X amount of parking spaces, the number of the parking spaces, the storage spaces, the number of the storage spaces, the description of the immovable held in co-ownership cadastral number here, the dimensions here, the area here. Please fill in according to your undivided co-ownership as subject. Section 4, we have the price and deposit plus taxes. So here, after having done a careful evaluation of the market, we have concluded with your buyer for a price of $485,000. The movable at stake here is not subject to tax. If it would be, it would go here, and you'd write a percentage relating to it. 4.3, the deposit, very important as it shows serious within a buyer towards a seller. We have $125,000 that would be here payable again to the agency in trust, right? Always in trust until we see the outcome of the promise to purchase. Method of payment. So we have here a total of $485,000 that we have set as a promise to purchase. The deposit is $125,000. So the new loan would be $360,000. Okay. Now, the additional sum is not relevant here. The existing loan. Should the buyer would be assuming an existing loan of the seller, they would take an Annex F to fill it out with us, and we would state the amount here. If there would be an assumption of a balance of sale, again, another Annex F would have been filled out in the amount here. All to the total price of our financial section of the total price promised of $485,000. Section 6, we have a must section to fill in. The new hypothecary loan. So it will be $360,000 as we saw in our financials of Section 5. So the same information gets repeated. Now, in PPU, promise to purchase undivided, what's different from other promise to purchase forms, that requires the buyer to take a loan from a specific financial institution. Okay, so it would be the number of years here, the minimum amount of years here. Here, the buyer declares that he's bound to an agency or a broker. 6.2 being the undertaking. 7.1 in section 7, a very highly important section. Section 7.1. This date is very important. That is the date that the premises was visited by our buyer to have seen any visual defects, right? If this would change after this date, we at least have this date as a basis to what was seen during that visit. In section 7, the costs of deed of sale in 7.3 of its publication, the copy is required at the buyer's expense. This is a fact unless the buyer assumes the existing hypothec or the seller provides a balance of sale. Then the seller decides on the notary if that would be the case. Okay? Read whole content of section 7 of damages and other related clauses. Section 8, very important, the inspection by a person chosen by the buyers. Here we have the X amount of days that was confirmed here. It's 7 days. Do not forget, we also have the 4 days following the expiry of the above mentioned time period. That will be 7 plus 4, 11. Remember to section 8, the auto accept clause. Now, in an inspection, if a buyer is satisfied, he would simply fill out a notice of fulfillment after the inspection. If the buyer is not satisfied and he wants to make it null and void, he must give a written notice and a copy of the inspection report. Remember the box that initials here if the identified in clause 2.1 of the risk of waiving an inspection. So should we have a client waiving the inspection, they must initial here. A highly, highly important step. Please do not forget. I invite you to rehear the video at the end and take notes as well. Section 9, review of documents by the buyer. Note, no documents are specified in the promise to purchase undivided as in the promise to purchase divided. It depends on the situation since we do not know if they have a co-ownership, agreement, etc. Please take note. We have the X amount of days for the documents that you must fill out here, should there be a request. Declarations and obligations of the seller. Section 10. The seller declares, please read carefully. Now, the undivided co-owners having the following preemptive right, if applicable, indicate time period and terms. Note here, if the owners have an agreement and did not renounce it, read the undivided co-agreement. Copy the specific clauses in this section. Very important to know the delay in order to plan our inspection, etc. The seller undertakes to obtain the undivided co-owners a written waiver of these preemptive rights within the X amount allocated days. Now, having waived their preemptive right, in the case where undivided co-owners do not have a preemptive right, indicate names of undivided co-owners who have waived their preemptive or redemption right. Step 3, example. In this section, fill in parts if there is no co-owners agreement that was renounced to the redemption right. Other situation example. If the co-owners have or do not have an agreement and all have renounced to both their rights, fill in both parts. Note, the above section with a stated number of days equals the days allocated for waivers to be done. Okay? 10.2, delivery of the immovable. 10.3, the ownership documents. Remember the 10.2, seller must not bring modifications to his property. If work is to be done, we place it in 12.1 or an Annex G before the deed of sale. Costs relating and repayment and cancellation, defect or irregularity. A broker should be very proactive in order to protect his client, the buyer. The intervention of the spouse, if applicable, and the damages in 10.7. Remember that commission is earned when all the conditions are met. Section 11, declarations and obligations common to the buyer and seller. Here must indicate a date the seller buyer for the signing on the notary date and the occupancy of the premises on 11.2 at the hour that is promised here. Adjustments would be either at the date of signing of the deed of sale or the date of occupancy. Please make your choice accordingly. 11.4, agency or broker remuneration. The buyer and seller irrevocably instruct the act notary to pay directly to, you put the name of the agency that it would be instructed to. 11.5, the inclusions. Here I have a note. In a promise to purchase undivided, such as the one we are doing today, for any other promise to purchase, these clauses are identical to an exclusive brokerage contract. It is important to note that the buyer may add property that they wish to include here that was not included in the brokerage contract. Okay, so any other specifications that relate to the inclusions of the home. 11.6, exclusions. Same note as section 11.5 applies for the exclusions as well. 11.7, as stipulated in the brokerage contract by the seller. Example, a heat pump in a furnace room. 11.8, as stipulated in the brokerage contract. Example, an air conditioning wall units. There are two of them here in the living room and the main bedroom. Section 12, other declarations and conditions. Example, this section is where we can repeat all the declarations found in the description sheet, such as a sale without legal warranty of quality at the buyer's own risk. Remember, the description sheet is simply the seller's intentions only, whereas the promise to purchase is the pre-contract that has been established between the parties. This section also applies to situations that exclude the warranty of compliance for the combustion appliances mentioned in the BCU. Buyer must stipulate it here if it is in the case. Example, the wood stove, fireplace, etc. Very big note, be very careful as the promise to purchase undivided or any other promise to purchase can be discarded if a seller is obliged to accept an offer that requires them to accept a warranty that they did not want to offer in the first place. Section 12, we have the other declarations and conditions. Please use an Annex G again if more space is needed for the conditions and agreements. You have a very large space here. Section 13, we have the annexes. Very important. Firstly and foremost, the declaration seller number contract to be placed here as it forms an integral part of this promise to purchase undivided, this PPU. If you had used an Annex G, the number would go here, and any other annexes of your transactions, they as well would have made an integral part of this PPU. Just for the example, which was not in this case, but let's say we would have an Annex F, you would place the annex number here. Conditions of acceptance. So therefore, the buyer and the seller declare their consent is on the result of any representation or condition. The buyer is irrevocably committed until you will stipulate the time and what was agreed upon as a date. Okay? If the seller accepts his promise to purchase within this deadline, it shall constitute a contract that is legally binding on the buyer and seller until the full execution. If the seller does not accept it within this deadline, this promise to purchase shall become null and void. Interpretation is the section 15, and we finish off with section 16, which are the signatures. On the left-hand side, the signature of the buyer and the witness being us. Right-hand side is the seller's reply. In this case, there's been a refusal, and therefore a counter proposal number has been placed here. If it would have been accepted, it would be this way, and there would be obviously no counter proposal. Okay, here we go. Remember the acknowledgement of receipt. In any case, the buyer acknowledges having received a copy of the seller's reply. Here, should there be an intervention of the seller's spouse, always on the right bottom section here. Now, having gone through this very important promise to purchase undivided with you, the PPU, I will be enclosing you with a checklist that will be attached to this video in order for you to verify and make sure that all the criteria and basics have been met, and there be less chance and a nil chance of errors within this verification. I hope this session has been instructive and satisfactory for you. I'm wishing you the best of success. Thank you.